Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We're zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is when it comes to healing, when it comes to sorting through a lot of the sort of chaos, how do you know that you have reached a point of no return? In other words, if you are coming through really a toxic relationship or really what we're talking about, in terms of toxicity, we're talking about a real sort of violation energy. And this violation energy is more, of an assuming of your energetic space, which is really the heart space. So, in terms of like healing, I think that's a great question because it's like, how do you know if you've healed? How do you know if your feet are firmly planted on the ground and you've got direction, you've got guidance, you're one, you've got some alignment, you've got some sort of, feel good vibes going with you no matter what, who comes into the room, who texts, who calls. There isn't this sort of shift or, anxiety or fear when this person comes around or you talk about them or hear about them or an email brings them up, because oftentimes, even just, having this as a stimulus, it can trigger people. And so when you're talking about healing, you have to understand that there's a certain sort of chaos that ensues after a violation energy. So a violation energy, so to really understand healing and really succeed is to know that the heart space, which is where your feelings are, your emotions, are sort of set on an event in the past, which if it's been wounding or traumatizing, you're going to be automatically sensitive to events that are similar, or if it's this person. So in other words, it keeps reigniting this feeling, and oftentimes it's stored within the body. So a trigger basically just is like a flame, like if you've seen a lighter and it just lights it up. So when you're around, when you're going through your day and you're having sort of this anxiety or fear or doubt, realize that that is an effect from an event that occurred previously. And the event you have held on to, oftentimes people will hold on to these events very tightly, and so tight that oftentimes, just getting situated here, trying to just do some different settings and things for our videos. So thank you for your comments. I'm trying to switch it up a little bit here. And I hope you can see me. So, these trigger events, and it's basically like, is this feeling of anxiety ever going to go away? Will I reach a point of no return? And so, to really completely heal is really to understand in a compartmental or, sort of like a little package bundled way. If you can compartmentalize it and just sort of put it in a box, is to understand that you have experienced a violation energy as the result of an event. So usually there is a formative event during your relationship that some transgression, some trespass, against you. I'm basically calling this a violation energy, where someone who has been very inconsiderate, rude, toxic, meaning a violation once again. In other words, you don't feel that it's comfortable, you don't feel it's pleasant, and you're sort of living in this, very nebulous, unclear anxiety. Oftentimes that is latent and an effect that's based on an event or events in one's past. So to really heal, you have to look at and understand and process the event or events that was, that you have experienced from people, an individual or persons, and then understand that what you experienced is basically compartmentalized in that event in the past. So in other words, it is over there somewhere, and if it's been repressed or pushed down, in other words, when this event occurred, you didn't have the resources to deal with it. You didn't have the resources, in other words, how do I handle this? How do I cope? This feels really awful, but I can't speak up. Oftentimes it's like a freeze or fawn experience where people, when they are violated, they just sort of, their mouth is agape and they don't know how to respond. They don't want to confront. So they get into an avoidance sort of tendency because they just don't have the tools or the resources to make sense. In other words, to process what occurred at that event or series of events. So to really heal, to really come through and have a sort of real, true, feel-good authenticity where you as a whole and complete person are feeling all right and adjusted and at peace, is to begin to release some of the displaced, we'll call it displaced anger and hostility and aggression. So these sort of very, I just want to say that they're very forceful feelings. So it's the forceful feelings that have created oftentimes this violation energy. And so people then, as a result of dealing with toxic, narcissistic people, let's just, I don't want to get into some labels. I want to try to get away from some labels. But this individual or series is to understand that this event it creates like a ripple effect that tends to, flow through your mood and your temperament. And so they're held on to. It's important to understand that these events are held on to because there's something significant. There's a significance, there's an importance that you spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, intellectually, oftentimes it's on so many varied levels, including relationships and how you develop, during the formative, meaning your period of your life where you're kind of forming your decisions and you're forming, your perspective, your reality, how you fit in to the overall scheme of your life. Oftentimes is sort of tainted. I guess I want to give the word tainted, meaning just sort of there's a leaking through. In other words, there's a series of events. So it's very important to understand, for you to really heal, to understand the events or series of events that occurred, exactly what occurred. Even if it was so many years ago, oftentimes I find people who I work with, they can, pull it up like it was yesterday. I mean, it's just still that live running through them. And it's a violation energy. It's beyond a disrespect. And the reason why it's held on to, if you can kind of explore this within your own heart and in the privacy of these videos, it's oftentimes to understand that in those very moments, there was sort of a life or death experience. It really comes right down to self-preservation and not knowing how to preserve or protect yourself in the midst of those events. In other words, it's like being caught off guard, but being caught off guard in a very deep and lasting manner. And so one feels that they've lost face. They've lost, and I hope you can see me. They feel, probably I'm getting some glare from the glasses here, I apologize. So there's a feeling or a sense of being stuck. But furthermore, these formative experiences that sort of, carry over and sort of roll, just sort of, they sort of, the word that I'm thinking of is, it just sort of seeps into your life, and it oftentimes, bubbles up to the surface when you see this person or see their name, you get reignited. So it's to understand that what happened in those events and to work through it and process it, because the reason why people continue to get triggered is because they haven't worked through those very core events, really sort of dissected them, really sort of taken a look at, the who was the role model or mentor for your emotions and feelings at that point. Because at the hands of a toxic individual, oftentimes, you're in their world. It's like you don't even have a place in the world, it's their world. And then so there's this feeling of lack of ownership, lack of being in control, lack of being respected, lack of being listened to, lack of being touched, lack of being given eye contact, just sort of this sort of being ignored, of your, really sort of your place in the world. And this is a very serious matter, so it's to understand and really go back, to the point. And so it takes, you might need to kind of go through it and comb through it and work through it a number of times and talk about it. Because oftentimes with talking about it, you're able to be heard, be listened to, sort of go back to those events and just be there in the present, which is, if you're an adult and this happened when you're a child, so to really go back to that event and to understand and feel the feelings that you felt in a safe manner, and being able to then express yourself in the present now. In other words, how did it make you feel? Who were the players? Who was there? Who was modeling this specific type of behavior that you've been holding on to? And what was the behavior? What was the feeling? To really understand that violation. And understand, and then what you felt that you were missing in that situation, and to really ask yourself, what was I really missing in that situation? What was it that I didn't have? What was it that I didn't say? What was it that I couldn't do? And once you can put your finger on it, then you can kind of go back to that event. There's an event that is the cause of the anxiety and the violation and a feeling of being wounded or hurt or being shaky or having anxiety or the I'm not good enough, I've got holes, to my personality, I'm not all there, I don't feel, fully in my body. Is because oftentimes people have lived in a fight or flight and they haven't been able to create an identity that is based on being okay in the world at large. I mean, it's really a very global, or what you might call a sort of gestalt, meaning there's, gestalt psychology, which means the mind, if there's a piece missing, if you see, if you see a picture and there's or a puzzle and or just like a drawing and something is missing, there's something called Gestalt theory where the mind sort of fills it in. It sort of fills in the gap. It fills in what's missing. And it's to understand that these events in the past where one was violated or betrayed or lied to or not attended to, not guided, not given affection, not given, your place to be on your soapbox, to have your story told. There was no one there to listen to you, to sit you down and say, oh, tell me what happened. Let's work through this, and then help you manage and guide your feelings. So, and that oftentimes creates a sort of anger and then a resentment, and a resulting chaos and resentment and feeling of being, not having direction. And then also, with this, then forming relationships where that wound is sort of constantly there. And really, so to heal, I think that's a wonderful question. And so how do you know, if you're there or if you're working through it? It's to kind of go back and sort of flush out those events, like really understand. And when I say compartmentalize, I mean understand it as kind of, I don't want to say like an isolated event, but a specific event that triggers these feelings and exactly what were they. I felt that, I had to do this, or I was yelled at, or I was lied to, or there was deception, that we see in people who have narcissistic personality issues. Basically, a pathological sense of self importance and a lack of empathy can create this violation energy and then what we would call an emotional wound, or, not just having your feelings hurt, but it's something deeper. And, really where you feel just invalid, what we call negative validation or complete invalidation, as if you don't, have a place in this world. So there's a gestalt. People feel that they're not really, they don't really belong. They don't really fit in. And it's the gestalt, the piece that they're missing is them, So when they feel sort of empty or lost or feeling like I'm not quite all there, or I have this anxiety, there's a gestalt, which means, you need to be able to round out, not only flush out and work through those experiences and then those feelings in those formative years, and go back and kind of revisit them, like what we might call inner child work. John Bradshaw, a wonderful, wonderful man, and done a lovely work. I would recommend all of his books: Homecoming, Shame, The Shame That Binds You. I mean, read these things, because shame will bind you to the abuser. If you are ashamed, you feel that, that you have to stay close to the source of pain because there's really no way out. So you have to understand, what were your core feelings: being ashamed, being humiliated, being embarrassed, feeling like you don't have a face, you're afraid to show your face, because you have so many feelings that it results in a chaos. When we talk about really strong feelings, that are caused by people who are narcissistic or who have personality disorders, we're really talking about some of the darker, or what we'd call it, just the more negative feelings, particularly a core issue, a core shame, a core of shame. And oftentimes this is the resulting feeling of being violated by someone who is perhaps narcissistic, going over your boundaries, just talking to you as if you're not a concrete, three-dimensional human being with a heart and lungs and a brain. And, so there's this feeling of lack, and sort of being missing. There's something missing. So really the healing is kind of going through those experiences, sorting through them, seeing what was missing, and then adding what was missing. In other words, your adult now comes in and revisits and strokes the hair of that child, or when you were a teenager, or in your 20s or 30s or your 40s or 50s. This can still continue. So through the ages, being there for your spirit, and your psyche and your emotional body, which comes out. Your emotions emote from your body. So you need to be able to open up those floodgates, the chakra system, the heart, to have everything moving fluidly. And oftentimes people who are blocked or wounded, tend to crunch over. They don't. They're not aware of certain things in their environment. So, it can be a feeling of, that they're disoriented, and feeling just a lot of anxiety and being wounded. So it's going back through those events and then being present in the present moment, i.e. meaning now, and revisiting those experiences and really looking at them and seeing what the feelings were, what you feel the tools and the strategies, or the people who should have, would have, could have, should have, what they should have done, and the fact that was not present. So now being there present for yourself in the way that you needed to be, the way that you needed to be responded to and listened to and honored. So it's to develop that self-compassion and that self-empathy for yourself now as an adult, and while reviewing those events of the past. Does that make sense? So your mature mind, in other words, what you've been through, and if you've listened to a lot of these videos, you're kind of understanding things like boundaries and the energetic, etheric field that, emits from you, and then a protection of that, but in opening up more so of that energy. So in other words, releasing what is trapped, because what's trapped is what continues to snag, so releasing what is trapped. So oftentimes, if you talk about those events, I really needed, and then kind of, and then using your ability to imagine your adult self going and being with you, now that you know better, now that you know more, now that you know that it wasn't your fault, now that you know it was not anything that you did, now that you're not to take it personally, and you're not to feel less than, you're not to think that you can't handle things, that lack of confidence. Am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I handling this the right way? All those sort of self-doubt questions, is to let those all go and surrender and say, it is enough. It is the way it's supposed to be. And amen. And I'm just going to allow it to be. And then you sort of fill in a wholeness of your perspective. But really that kind of going back, it does take some work to continue to revisit those events until you really understand, if you had a poor role model or you didn't have any role models, it's time to then fill it in with the role models that suit you, and so as you mature and you grow and you kind of look back and say, this is what I was missing, is to then revisit those and reflect through the experience of metacognition, and to really be present with yourself in those situations and see how things could have been handled better. But then you then are there to protect. You are there to reflect. You are there to listen. You are there to stand up. You are there to intervene. It's like an intervention, and looking back with that, so that you're able to scoop yourself up, pick yourself up, and handle things appropriately, and so that the violation did not take place. So it's not to deny, but it's to help you to understand, that your feelings were valid, and then let's listen to those. Let's look at those. Let's give you, some nurturing. Let's, bring some warmth into that horrific experience, and to have some self-compassion, and to say, whoa, you really took a beating there. You really took, on an individual who was very inconsiderate, who's had issues, problems. Let's let them go. Let's just surrender them to the divine. Let's let the divine recycle them and just work with them and their issues, and let them go in love and light. And then to realize, fill in the gestalt, fill in the big picture. You will feel more whole and more at home, and that you have a place in the world when you give yourself a place in the world, when you give yourself that gestalt, where you fill in a tangible sense that you're present for yourself in those times when you feel that no one was there or you were violated. In other words, to take your greater self, and in other words, you can't be hurt anymore, because you've got your higher consciousness now taking a look at it and understanding, and so when you do this, it's like a divine intervention that you can give for yourself. So it takes some reflection, some videos like this, being able to focus in, talking about it with somebody who gets it, who has empathy, and can help you kind of comb through and really sort of, really look at and massage those events, and to see, where the thorns were, and to dethorn, get those, out, because it's like under your skin. So is to process it to the point where all the thorns are removed, and then you're just holding a rose, and you can admire the rose, and you don't feel that you're going to get stuck, pinched, You're not going to get a thorn in the fingers. You're not going to get pricked. You know, there's a feeling that you're not going to experience this really sharp, intense pain that, you know, somehow, and that you're then presenting, you know, that you're just here, you know, to please these people, and I've got to be a certain way for you. It's allowing that whole perspective, or how you thought you had to perceive a situation. It's to surrender that, and then just to allow yourself to be. But to be then in a cool, calm, collected body where you've worked through it enough so that you've come to peace. You've come to peace and acceptance and embracing. You know, and then you can kind of sort through it and then just let it fly away like a balloon, you know, and let it rise up to the heavens. It truly is it's a non-linear process. It's a letting go and allowing that really takes time, and it takes sorting through, and it takes saying I'm sorry, you know, to the people, you know, to yourself, forgiving others, forgiving yourself, so that there's no, you know, animosity when you have, you know, because when you're in the violation energy, if someone's coming at you with this hostility and anger, it's like a force. So then people then have to be a counter force, and it's very uncomfortable. So just deflect that. Begin to go into a cool, calm body. Don't feel that you have to be a counter force to that force. And then begin to live in a whole different energetic field and perspective, which is filled with peace, joy, happiness, contentment, self-acceptance, self-discovery, and feeling that gestalt, that wholeness in life, and that you belong. You are a child of the universe. You belong. You belong. And stop, you know, and that also comes then with letting the people go, and then feeling that you don't have to please or be that same, you know, holding on to that same event. So let go of the event. Once you work through it, you can then let go of the events and then really more fully be in your present day and enjoy it more fully. You know, be more present without that sort of that nagging feeling of being hurt, wounded, you know, violated energy, feeling the inferior. It's letting that all go. I hope this video helps and give you some tools and direction. It's your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day.